Now, in this module, we shall learn about how the different glass fragments which are collected from the crime scene, they are identified according to their thickness, curvature, actual physical fit, color, fluorescence, their hardness, and various other surface features. Now, basically, before going into the details of what we are going to study in this module, the basic question arises as to why do we want to study glass fragments at all? Now, traces of glass can actually become a very important source of forensic evidence. Now, glass fragments, they are regularly encountered at crime scenes, particularly those which involve motor vehicle accidents, thefts, and burglaries. Now, basically, we also know that windows and door glasses, they are a common point of entry into buildings for burglaries, and as a result, a large quantity of broken glass may be found at the crime scene near the windows or near the glass doors. Now, such glass fragments, they may remain at the scene for a longer time, which actually depends on the type of crime, and also they do not degrade like some biological evidences. Now, research has indicated that almost 60% of the cases involving glass provide most of the time very positive evidence, and only in 40% of these cases the evidence is strong. So, depending on the circumstances, the findings can also refute the allegation that a person was involved in a crime or not. For example, when a pane of glass is broken, very minute glass fragments can be showered onto the hair, clothing, and footwear of people which are in close proximity, maybe at least 1.5 meters and possibly up to 3 meters away. Now, the number of fragments transferred decreases rapidly with distance from the breaking window panes. Now, aside from backward projections of fragments towards the breaker, the fragments can also be acquired, for example, by climbing through a broken window or treading on pieces of broken glass. Now, a preliminary examination of the surface of the glass can actually indicate the source, that is, it is a flat surface, then it may be from window glass or plate glass. A cylindrical surface may be from a bottle, a spherical surface from a spectacle glass or headlamp glass. Now, this preliminary examination is done considering that the two glasses do not have a common origin. This examination is actually achieved by considering surface texture, pattern, color, etc. Now, the general condition of the glass should be inspected very minutely and very carefully using a stereo microscope even before cleaning it. Moreover, it is also desirable to select glass fragments with edges that appear freshly broken. Now let us discuss the various physical properties of the glass on the basis of which we can identify these glass fragments in details one by one. Let us first come to the thickness of the glass. Now for a sheet of glass, and if the pieces of smaller sample have portions of both the surfaces present, then it becomes more useful to measure the thickness using a micrometer screw gauge. Now the thickness of the glass sheet may vary from one place to other, and also it may not have a uniform thickness throughout. Thus it becomes very beneficial to study the variations in their thickness before comparing the thickness of the controlled sample and that of the sample which is found from the crime scene. Now, thickness in the forensic laboratory can be measured using a micrometer or a caliper, but requires that fragments possesses both original surfaces. Now, because of the fact that the thickness produces a quantitative measure, the precision and the accuracy of the micrometer must be considered while evaluating the results of the thickness measurements. When the thickness of a piece of flat glass is measurably different from the range expressed in the known glass standards, then those glasses can be determined to have come from different sources. Otherwise, if the thickness of a flat piece of glass is comparable to that expressed in the known glass standard, then we can say that both the glass samples, that is the one which is known sample and the other which is found from the crime scene, they have a common origin. Now let us come to the next property of curvature of the glass. Now determination of the curved surface of a glass can actually help us to distinguish that glass from other types of glasses like container glasses or decorative glasses. A spherometer is then used to measure the radius of curvature of the glass fragment's curved surface. Now, a spherometer is nothing but a kind of screw gauge itself. Now, the radius of curvature is found using the formula that radius of curvature R is equal to L square by 6h plus h by 2, where L is nothing but the mean distance between the legs of the spherometer and h is the height of the curved surface. Now, this height of the curved surface can precisely measured by first keeping the spherometer on a plain glass surface and then on the curved portion, and the distance will then give us the height of the curved surface. Now, if the glass fragments are very large, then a stereo microscope can be used. Now, coming to the physical matching or the fit. Now, physical fit between the two glasses can actually become the best method, but due to different types of glass fractures, physical fit becomes a very rare type of feature to be taken into consideration while identifying the glass type. It requires the edges of one fragment to fit exactly and perfectly into an edge of another glass fragment. Now, a complementary lateral fit along the broken edges over a length of approximately 1/4 of an inch or more will establish that the two glass fragments were continuous before breakage or not. Now, the match is a three-dimensional match. So, under stereo microscope, the edges of the samples are carefully and precisely observed, which will exactly fit into each other. Now, lateral pressure has to be applied in order to see the small irregularities intermesh and hold the piece together so that one can actually feel the sense of exact fit along the broken edges of the glass which is being found from the crime scene. Now, coming to the most visible physical property of a glass, that is the color. Now, on some very rare occasions, when glass fragments associated with a crime scene are colored, for example, decorative glasses or bottles, then the color would be used for exclusion or identification. Even colorless glasses are usually found to have some perceptible tint. Thus, when the large fragments of glass they are available, their color should be compared. Comparing color can actually distinguish between two or more sources of glass. The sample size may affect the apparent color. Therefore, side by side comparisons should be made of approximate, equal, and sufficient size. Now, pieces of at least 5 millimeters are desirable if the comparison on the basis of color is to be done. Now, the fragments are placed on a white background, for example, a very fine filter paper, and the comparison is made in bright diffused daylight. The examination will be able to distinguish between the true color of the glass and the color of any of the coatings that may be on the surface of the glass fragment. Now, observing the glass using both fluorescent and incandescent light is useful in distinguishing different colors or tints using a stereo microscope or a spectrophotometer. Now, these instruments we have already discussed in the previous module along with their figures. Now, but most of the time it is not possible to compare the color of some microscopic glass fragments due to the insufficient color density. Coming to the feature of fluorescence. Now, although most of the glass samples exhibit little or no fluorescence, some types of glass they do exhibit fluorescence with colors which may be blue, violet, brown, purple, or green when examined in ultraviolet light. Hence, in most of the cases, it is very useful in distinguishing between different glasses. Now, this examination is done by observing the glass fragments over a non-fluorescent background by illuminating it consecutively by a short wavelength and a long wavelength ultraviolet rays, that is, of wavelength 254 nanometers and 350 nanometers respectively. Fluorescence throughout the body of a piece of a glass fragment can be caused by the presence of certain elements such as uranium in chrome green glass. Now, while comparing fluorescence, the fragments of similar thickness should be used, which is very important precaution. But before comparison, a thorough washing to remove any oil stains, grease, or other possible fluorescent foreign debris on the glass surface is to be cleaned properly, which is an absolute necessity. Now, during the production of modern glass manufactured using the float glass process, liquid glass is poured onto a bath of molten tin. Now, the glass surface that was in contact with the tin bath will fluoresce when exposed to shortwave ultraviolet light. This fluorescence is caused by the uptake of tin on one side of the glass during manufacturing. It has been reported that some coatings applied to glass will also show fluorescence. Now, as with the assessment of color, visual comparison of fluorescence should be performed side by side. Now, fluorescence examination can also be performed using fluorescence spectroscopy on specimens as small as 0.05 millimeter square. Now, fluorescence on a glass surface will be detected only if the surface that will fluoresce is preserved, collected, and analyzed properly. Coming to the hardness of the glass fragment now. Now, since glasses are very appreciably in hardness, this property may also be used for differentiation. Now, the hardness determination is possible on an arbitrary scale and requires internal standards. Thus, two glass fragments can be compared for hardness by determining their mutual scratching powers. Now, if the hardness difference is small, then it becomes quite helpful to study the scratches or attempted scratches under a low power binocular microscope. Coming to the surface features of the glass now. The surface features can be formed either intentionally or accidentally during manufacturing or fabricating processes. These form another basis of comparison to distinguish between different sources of glass. They can serve as identifying features while examining the glass fragments. For fracture match, if the feature is present on both the fragments. Surface features, they include coatings, thin films, and mirrored backings, etching, texturing, etc. Now, coating or thin films in brief are usually seen on architectural or automotive glass. These films are actually done to increase the durability of glass and are composed of wide variety of materials in single or multiple layers. They may be amorphous or polycrystalline. Now, the thickness of coating can range from nanometer thin films to millimeter, which are the mirrored films. Now, coatings can be applied to either one or more surfaces. Since it is not possible to distinguish coatings, so instrumental methods of analysis like X-ray diffraction, etc. are used. Now, coming to the manufacturing features. Now, intentional surface features include etching, texturing, frosting, etc., while accidental surface features are as a result of manufacturing that include rock pits, polishes, etc. They can be compared visually very easily. There are some additional surface features also. That is, there's nothing but distinguishing between glass fragments in terms of scratches, abrasions, etc. These should be examined and characterized carefully using stereo microscope before cleaning. Now let us summarize what we have studied in this module. In this module, we have studied the importance of interpreting, analyzing, and thus comparing two glass fragments on the basis of major physical features of glass. Now, research has indicated that 60% of the cases involving glass provided some positive evidence, and that in 40% of these cases, the evidence is very strong. These physical features include the thickness, hardness, physical matching, color, fluorescence, curvature, some surface features like coatings, etc.